Hi everybody, so let's do a quick practice run through of an evaluation of a resource. So looking at the Real News Fake News guide that we have here under the Evaluating News Exercise tab, there's a sample option over here on the left hand side that we're just going to work through and look together at and move through the steps, move through the questions, so that after the video is done, you all will be able to use the box in the middle column to choose a resource from the list of 4 here and complete the same form just to have some practice and to submit it to show both me and your instructor that all of this made sense to you, or that you feel comfortable with the resource evaluation process, just so you can move forward and have that tool in your kit as you continue research. So here on this, in the Evaluating News practice, we have just this Google form that goes through 4 or 5 different questions, just pretty basic to follow the content from the other tabs in this particular unit, to think about when we click on this link and open the article, who's the author, what is their area of expertise, what is the publication or the company that is producing the article or allowing it to be published. What do you think the purpose or mission is of the publication as a whole? Why do they exist? Who's their audience? Why have they chosen to print or host a particular article to share with whoever their readership is? And then also, do you think this author of the particular article we're going to look at is being objective in the sharing of information? Is there bias present? How do we know? What can we look for? And then if you were going to do research on this particular topic, which is about gene editing and kind of CRISPR technology, if that was in fact your chosen article, after evaluating it and reading through the article, do you think it would be a quality resource? And that is a personal decision. There's no wrong answer there. It's just kind of, do I feel like this would be helpful to me? Yes or no? And why? Why do I feel that way? So those are the questions we're working with. I'm going to go back up a little bit farther. We're going to click on that article title. We're going to work with one called New Gene Editing Techniques Could Transform Food Crops or Die on the Vine. Let's find out, from Scientific American. So by clicking on this link, it's going to take us to this particular article on the Scientific American website. And so to go through the order of the questions that we have, we need to say who's the author, what is their area of expertise. And one of the ways we can explore that option is to look and see, okay, there's the title of the article, a little synopsis, and then here's our author's name. We can click on the author's name to see if we get any sort of, okay, we get his list of stories. What sort of themes is he writing about? Looking through that option, or looking through these articles, we are, it's not giving us a ton of information about him as an author. So if that's the case, then we might need to Google this person, right? And that's what we know from our previous tabs in this Real News Fake News guide. So Stephen, just to make sure, Stephen S. Hall, and we will see. So Stephen S. Hall. Let's find out here. He published through Penguin Random House, which is a book publishing company, as well as through Scientific American. So for 25 years, Stephen S. Hall has written about the intersection of science and society in books, magazine articles, and essays, primarily in the New York Times Magazine. Okay, he is also the author of 5 previously critically acclaimed books, received numerous awards, including the Science and Society Journalism Award for book writing from the National Association of Science Writers. So he has expertise in writing about how science and society intersect. And when we look at this particular article, if we go back to it, sorry, we're kind of backing up here. This is looking at how gene editing, a highly scientific technique, could impact people's everyday food supply, right? So there's that intersection. So I would say, if I were filling out our evaluation exercise, I would say, okay, Stephen S. Hall is our author, and he has expertise and has won numerous awards for his reporting on the intersections of science and society. So I feel that, at least in our evaluative process, I would trust this person's reporting and writing on particular topics. So our next question then is, what is the publication allowing this author's work to be published? And it is Scientific American. Scientific American as a website, if we were wanting to know a little bit more about it, or as a publication. Again, this is one of those moments where we want to find the about section for the website as a whole, which is usually at the bottom of the page, right? Hopefully that's not a new surprise piece of information for you. But as we scroll down here to get to that about section, we'll click on it and we see, okay, so Scientific American covers the advances in research and discovery that are changing in our understanding of the world and shaping our lives. Founded in 1845, it is the oldest continuously published magazine in the United States. Authoritative, engaging features, news, opinion, and multimedia stories from journalists and expert authors related to the intersection of science and society. So if we're thinking about this and we're looking at this particular resource, it is devoted to explaining those connections, translating those connections of like high science and research studies and research methodologies to a general public that is interested in understanding how science impacts their daily lives. Right. So that would be how we would look at Scientific American. It's a magazine devoted to connecting regular people with scientific research and understanding how it impacts them. Right. So if we're thinking about that, then we can take a look at these other questions. So we know that Scientific American published the article. What's the purpose or mission of the publication? It's exactly what they said in the about section, that connection of science and society. Why have they chosen to print or host this article? Because the author writing also focuses on that exact intersection in his own work, as he has demonstrated with his books and his other articles writing for this particular publication and others. So it's a perfect fit. And their audience, as they say in their about section, is the general American public who would be interested in understanding how science and society meet, and what that means for just a normal interested person who's not an expert in particular scientific research methods or method. Not research methods, but someone who just wants to know how science and technology are impacting what they are doing as they go about their daily lives. So the next piece that we have, do we think the author is being objective in their reporting? Is there bias? How do we know? And then the last question, would you use this article as evidence for an argument you are building? For these two questions, we would have to go back and take a more in-depth look at the article. And you'll notice in this evaluative process, that's the funny thing, right? A lot of the things that we would base our evaluative process on, we haven't even gotten to the text of the article yet. So we want to make sure that we can trust the publication itself as well as the author's expertise, and then dive into the content of the article, because we want to make sure that the people sharing and producing the content are people or organizations that we would deem trustworthy, and then actually get to the information itself. So that's an interesting piece that we tend to focus on when we're really deep diving into an evaluation. So in this particular article, we're not going to go line by line, obviously, through this text. But the nice thing about this particular article is it does give, in brief, kind of a quick synopsis of the main points of this particular article, and it does try to talk about both sides of the issue. At least we see that in the in brief. That we can see. It tells us what CRISPR is. It tells us what the potential potential positives could be, but it also will talk about how people are a little bit nervous about having their food be manipulated in such a way that feels weird, in some way if we're thinking about it. So this whole article talks about this sort of push and pull between the positives of adapting and changing agriculture and people's concerns about it. So we would have to go through and read this, a little bit more closely than what I'm doing right now to get the full picture. But in reading it before this video, I can tell you that it does tend to try to look at both sides of the issue to present a balanced perspective. So I would say the author is trying hard to be objective in the sharing of information about CRISPR and this food modifying technology, but is also, presenting a case that tends to be fairly positive in the end, because this is a magazine focused on innovations in science and how they interact with society and people's everyday lives. So there might be the bias in that, yes, we're going to say that this particular scientific advancement is a good thing, but it is trying to present both sides in the reporting. So that might be something we would note in the form to say it's trying to be balanced, but the nature of the publication may be indicating for us that they might be more likely to put a positive spin on some of these scientific advancements. And then lastly, if you were going to give a speech on CRISPR food modification or genetically modified organisms, you might consider using a source like Scientific American as a potentially useful resource, because it's a well-respected, well-known magazine for the general public who's interested in this topic, and that might be a good source to use to introduce the topic to your audience, depending upon who they are and how you want to inform them. So it's not a bad place to start, but it's not a fully scholarly source that has a whole research methodology and a peer review process behind it. So that's just one piece, depending on what your needs are for the assignment, what the requirements are for the resources that you're using. It could be helpful, but again, you always want to pay attention to those assignment requirements. So that is just kind of doesn't feel like a brief walkthrough since we've been looking at these pages and I've been talking for a while, but that is a brief way of looking at how to evaluate a particular article, particular resource. So now in thinking about the steps and how to think about an article and look at an article and look at the different places on a website to get to particular information, now it can be your turn. Take a moment, choose one of these articles in this list and use the same processes that we just did with this Scientific American article to pick one of these and evaluate it, and then submit the form to me so that I can pass it on to your instructor. Thanks, everybody.